Thank you. My name is Tim. I'm an alcoholic and I'm therefore an addict. Very glad to be here. That one of those readings which contained the line about what one should look for in the room, and one shouldn't ask the question, would you party with these people? I'm not sure when I was drinking and using that I partied. I don't think that is the right word for the serious business that I was undertaking. I've never been much of a people person anyway. I've always found my company so sensational. Why dilute it with anyone else? One's company, two's a crowd, and as a friend of mine says, it's not FOMO, fear of missing out, it's phobia, fear of being included. The good news for any introverts in the room is one doesn't have to, as it were, become a CA gang member to get clean. I needed to find a few people in recovery who had what I wanted, and different people need different things, and that's fine. And people talk a lot about love. Such a lovely topic is love. It's not one of my topics. When I'm in prison, I don't need a cuddle, I need a key. I need a way out. I don't need sympathy. I got a lot of people expressing how much they cared about me before I got into recovery, and it disgusted me then. Now, I quite like it now on occasion, but a little goes a long way. But before I got into recovery, love was used as a bargaining tool and a manipulation and a way of imposing obligations and all sorts of things which were very distasteful. Love certainly didn't solve my problems. But back to the beginning, one of the other readings mentioned freedom from mind-altering substances. And the reason that is of such value to me today is I've got a clear understanding that if I have any chemicals in my system, if I have anything in my system, or if I'm doing anything which fundamentally alters how I see things, how my mind works, and particularly how I feel, what my experience is of things, I'm not entirely in touch with the reality around me. How I feel is a function of how I'm reacting to what is going on out there. I don't want anything between me and that. I might as well be a brain in a jar if my thinking, my perceptions, my feelings are distorted. Even if I feel good. A friend of mine, an acquaintance of mine really, is a philosopher of all things. And he's taken into schools to give pretty young children an introduction to philosophy. And one of the questions he poses to class after class after class of 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds is this question. You've got two options. Option one is you're hooked up to a machine and drugged up to the eyeballs, and you will be there for the rest of your life and you will feel wonderful. But you won't do anything. You won't experience anything. Or you can live an ordinary life with which you're in full contact, and there are going to be very good things and there are going to be very bad things, but you'll have a life, you'll do things, you'll achieve things, you'll lose things. And the children, without an exception, go for option B. Now, if you pose that, I suspect, in a room of CA or AA, you'd get very mixed results. So my option today is to go for being entirely free. Now, I know different people have different journeys, and there are often legitimate reasons why people need some chemical help for a while. Fine, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about me and my decisions. I have no opinion on what anyone else does. Heaven forbid they should tell me what they're doing. I don't want to know. I've got enough trouble with one addict without having another one on my plate as well. Now, the other reason why I must remain free of mind-altering substances is something which in the book is referred to as a physical craving, which is not very helpful as a term in a sense. A few years ago, I had a dessert, and the dessert was a sort of custardy dessert, and a little way into it I thought, oh, I like this. This is very nice. You know where this is going, don't you? And it wasn't cocaine that was in it, it was alcohol, just in case you're wondering about that. I noticed I wanted the whole tart before I realised what was going on. The first thing I noticed was, I want more of this. So, as someone might have shared a few weeks ago, the craving is set off by consumption. In the office I work in, people get all sort of cravey mid-afternoon, and there's a biscuit corner where they all shamefully go and they plod up in an embarrassed way one after another. One of them breaks the ice, then that gives permission to the others. So they crave something, and then they have the thing, and then they're all right. So they crave something and they consume it, they're all right. I consume it, and then I'm off, then I'm craving it. But that just goes round in a circle. I consume more, I crave more. And my mind is offline, it's doing something else at this point. It's just entirely automated. And that automated effect, people say, well, they drank and used because they liked the effect. I didn't. Well, I did in a sense, but I did it when I didn't like the effect. So it wasn't the effect that was producing the drinking and the using. Otherwise, when I stopped liking it, I would have stopped, and I didn't. There were some good times sort of at the beginning. But honestly, in a lot of my drinking and using, it was bad night after bad night. Sometimes I'd have a few, and I'd know that it was only downhill from here because I was in a stinker of a mood when I started. And a couple of drinks didn't really help. They sort of numbed it a bit, I suppose, gave me a bit of a buzz, a bit of excitement. But I knew I wasn't going to go, everything's all right, I'm at one with the universe. That was not going to happen. And I knew that I would tip over into, I would get, if you know what this word means, rangy when I was drinking and using. I liked trouble. I liked mischief. I liked not knowing what was going to happen. I liked things being slightly edgy, and if they weren't, I made them edgy. I would crack open a can, not just of alcohol, but I would crack open a can of Cause Problem, simply because I liked the effect. That was the thing that I liked. I liked the effect of causing problems in other people's lives. Happy when everyone else is in chaos around me. Loved it. So my drinking and using was really problematic from the beginning. So I didn't drink and use because ... or in order to ... or because I was triggered by ... Once I had the first drink drinks the second drink. When you start a fire, there can be 100 things which start a fire. It could be a lightning strike or a match or a cast-aside cigarette or all sorts of things, or chemicals. But once a fire is started, the contagion is the same in every single fire. And it's like that with my drinking and using. Once I'm set off, contagion. And it spreads to every area of my life, and it goes on for years. So I can't have the first one. I really can't. If I consume something which turns out to have something in it, and it kind of sets me off a bit, I seem to be protected by virtue of my life in the world of recovery. I'm given some kind of defence to be able to come down off that little woo and not succumb to the impulse, which is certainly there, to have more. I'm protected. But I don't want to push it. I don't want to go around testing that little theory, So it's vanishingly rare that does happen, but it can happen. People are handed a drink, they're told, people swear blind it's just tonic water, and it's not just tonic water. So, with the knowledge that I had at a frankly early age that drink was no good for me and a lot of other substances and behaviours were no good for me, I was propelled on a number of occasions into sobriety. I was struck sober. I didn't get sober, as it were, by soberly analysing the situation and drawing the conclusion in a rational way that I should stop. Because if I'd been able to do that, boy, would I have stopped years before I actually did. Because 2 and 2 were making 4 for everyone else. I couldn't make 4 out of 2 and 2. So when I finally did make 2 and 2 into 4, the ability to do that and then to act on it was a gift. And if I were to throw it away, I don't know, it would be given again. So I've got to be really careful. But, and this is where we get to the interesting bit of addiction. There's a little bit of my physical brain which was trained for years. Drink is good, drugs are good, drink is good, drugs are good. And very occasionally it wakes up and goes, let's go and have a drink. Let's go and do something else. Why does it do that? I trained it to. Whatever you train it to do, it will do. It's not thinking. It's the physical brain does not think. The mind thinks. It's a different thing. It's going to shoot up that little idea. And the weird bit is you'd think after being in recovery for a little while that bit of the brain would be so shut down, so starved of attention, it would have gone away. Not likely. For some reason, it's there. There we have it. Hard luck. Now, I need a way of responding to that sanely when it hits. Because that thought will hit at some point. And it won't be because you're having a good day or because you're having a bad day or because of this or because of that. It'll just happen. Maybe it's more likely if you're having a bad day. Maybe it's more likely if you're suddenly released from a whole load of obligations. That's when it's more likely to hit for me. But it can happen randomly anyway, so you need to be prepared. It's not a matter of organising one's circumstances so one's physical brain doesn't shoot up the idea of having a drink, because that's not going to work. I need a defence. But the trouble is, being an alcoholic, being an addict, I don't have a natural defence against that. So either that thought immediately converts into an action plan and I'm off. Or we have a little talk, me and the thought have a little talk. And the talk appears to be having a rational conversation with me, telling me all the reasons why, all the bad things that have been happening, all of the good things that will happen if I have a drink or if I have a drug. And it appears to be using reason, but it's not. It's sort of pseudo-reason. It's rationalisation. I think I'm having a conversation with that bit of my brain about alcoholism, about alcohol, about the benefits of drinking or taking it. I'm not. I'm being slowly mesmerised and hypnotised until I don't know my arse from a hole in the ground and I go and use. That's what's going on there. And if I resist for long enough, it just pulls rank and says, right, we're off anyway. It's like playing chess with someone that deliberately overrides the rules of chess. Even if you win, you'll lose because it'll just move a piece in an illegitimate way and will win. The addiction always wins, unless I have a defence. I've got to be in the habit of not engaging with my own physical brain as the source of all wisdom, the fount of knowledge. I had to recognise I was not the captain of knowing things. In particular, I was not the captain of knowing what to do with my life. How did I draw this conclusion in early recovery? Someone said, look at your life, exhibit A. You did that. No one else did that. Everyone else is fine. You're not. Why? You are the problem, they said. I didn't like this at all. Because I'd been pinning my drinking, using, behaviours, including the antisocial behaviours and the illegal behaviours, I'd been pinning those on my childhood, my parents, my family, my this, my that. Anything but me. Mr. Pointy Finger over here was pointing at everything. And it was that. If only that were different, I'd be all right. But I wasn't. And it was untrue. So I had to develop a way of life which depended not on me being supremely rational at all times, but on following a system which works even when I'm bonkers. Sometimes my mind can be trusted, sometimes it can't. It can get a little bit upset about things, a little bit more than it should do at times. I don't know if you ever get a little bit more upset about things than you perhaps ought to at times. My mind is not entirely trustworthy. I do not want to give it the keys because it will kill me. It doesn't mean to, but it will. Because it's so easily mesmerised by thoughts of drinking and drugging and some other behaviours that it can't be trusted with anything serious, again, in any lasting way. Now, it doesn't mean I don't get to think. The AA 12 and 12, oh, you've got a copy there, talks about there being nothing wrong with intellect as long as humility is placed first. So I get to think through situations based on the facts, experience, principle, reason, prayer, meditation, contemplation, consultation with others. But the thinking is placed in a context where I'm not sitting on the throne having the final decision. There's some instinct which lies beyond all of those things which has the final decision. And I can fight it for a while, but it's going to win. Just like alcoholism and addiction won for a long time, it always wins if I remain awake. And it is more powerful, fortunately, than alcoholism and addiction. So that's why I trust God. And I didn't tell you this, but I had my first direct experience of conscious contact with God about a quarter of a mile from here. I know, in Walthamstow. You see, if it can happen here, it can happen really anywhere, in Chingford, in Dagenham. God's not fussy. We might be, but God isn't. And I won't go into the full story, but essentially it went something like this. Hi. Oh, thank you for calling. And then we had a little conversation. Those weren't the exact words, but God had been there the whole time. All I had to do was ask. That was a little over 32 years ago. I haven't drunk or had a drug since then. So whatever process was activated by that little conversation there is still going. That conversation didn't stop. So when I pray in the morning and say, God, please direct my thinking, as I did this morning, because it's the best system I know, pages 86 to 88 of that bigger blue book. When I do that, I trust that God will continue to direct my thinking all through the day. I don't need to keep reminding him every 5 minutes. He's not dim. He does not have dementia. He doesn't forget. I'm the one that forgets. And here's the thing about step 3. It says on page 63 we're to be frightfully careful about taking step 3 because it's a big thing to do, to make a decision to turn your will and life over. It is a process which once started, I don't think stops. There is a book by C.S. Lewis where these two children are transported to another world. And in this other world, there is some sort of table, and on the table there is a bell, and there's a little inscription under the bell, and they wonder what it's going to do, as one does. And what normally happens with a bell is you hit a bell and it makes a nice loud sound, and then the sound gradually fades away. And I think trying to establish a relationship with God is the opposite of that. What happens in this story, they hit the bell and the sound gets louder and louder and louder until the entire world that they're in collapses. And that's what step 3 will do for me, is it will destroy the life that is around me in order that I be given a new one. So one's got to be terribly careful, because the process is going to be underway. You've set something going now. Which is why I don't think one should start the steps seriously after step. In other words, one shouldn't take step 3 and commit to the process of what comes beyond there unless one's willing to go through the process and complete it. Because you're going to let all of the worms out. And it's a big old can of worms. And you can't put them all back. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. I can fool myself for a very long time, but as soon as I've started to tell the truth, as soon as half the cat is out of the bag, we know what the rest of the cat is going to look like approximately. It's no good trying to go back to lying to myself. It's not just a shape in a bag. I now know what it is. But on the upside, I think we're in a very good position in recovery today, partly because of technology, in that it's possible for people anywhere to get any kind of help. There's no ambiguity anymore about what the programme is. And I have to say, 32 years ago there was. There was very little sense that the Big Book contained the instructions. So if you wanted to do the steps, people say, well, go to a Steps and Traditions meeting, and that you'd read the 12 and 12, which obviously is very good, but is somewhat at odds with the Big Book in philosophy and in action and in purpose as well. It wasn't written to be a set of instructions. It was written to be a sort of fireside companion for those who'd made the journey. It wasn't meant to instruct people on how to take the journey. That's what the book is for. And I can't really fault the book, and there are a few little things which need to be tidied up, but essentially it works. It works as a set of instructions. The steps in the Big Book are indeed suggested. Now, what that means is the person making the offer of the steps is simply being polite and is not forcing me to do anything, because the consequences of what I do are mine, not theirs. If they force me, they're taking the responsibility for the consequences. They can't do that. So they're politely offering me something. But what they're offering me is a package deal. There's no sense in the word suggestion that one can make substitutions, as one can in Burger King, apparently. You can substitute. Do you go? You've been very good. Do they make substitutions?
You can make
there you go. There you go. You can make substitute. You can leave things out. You can add that. You can double things up, I imagine. With the programme, well, you can do what you want with it, but you won't get the right results. So I now do just what it says. But I don't do more than what it says either. You can F it up as much by over-egging you can over-egg the pudding as opposed to under-egging the pudding. You can do too much as well as too little. So, at the end of what one calls the nightly review, the page 86 questions, when we retire at night we constructively review our day, and it says let's be careful not to wander into morbid reflection. Why is it cautioning against that? Because it knows us. Because it was written by us. It knows that if we spend too long on it, we will wander into morbid reflection. 5 minutes max. Because I start wandering straight away. There we go. So no, I don't write anything down in the Step 11 review. Why? Because it doesn't tell me to. Once I've written it down, I've made the illusions in my head real. I want to get rid of them, not keep them. I write down now the corrective measures are to be carried into the next day. Now, implied in that is the notion that one's going to keep them in mind and then implement them. And if writing them down helps you to implement them, very good. But there's nothing, I tried it for years, nothing more depressing than writing down all the things you've done wrong every day. So I write in step 4, I write in step 8, that's it. I'm much more interested in writing down what God would want me to do instead. Whatever I focus on becomes greater in my mind. And what is my life like today? Embarrassingly, it's perfectly ordinary. So I'm married and I have a job and blah, blah, blah. I know lots of people, which is odd given that I'm not a people person. And I communicate with quite a lot of them on a regular basis. And events still happen which my mind decides are challenging. Nothing is innately challenging, but there are things which are on the curriculum for me to learn. So what I've learnt to do when problems arise is respond to them. You want to get in there first. You want to get in there when something happens, a difficulty arises. You want to get in there with big book principles straight away, before the mind has started to work on it. So when something happens, to say, this is an opportunity for God to show everyone else how apparently difficult circumstances can be dealt with poise, with ease, simply, without any fuss, without any to-do, without me going and blabbing about it to every Tom, Dick and Harry I come across, expanding the problem each time I do so. So immediately, God, show me how to deal with this with poise, without losing my head, without getting involved. I only trust alcoholics and addicts by and large on addiction, except occasionally there are professionals in the field I found very helpful. But sometimes journalists will say things about addiction, and one of them said something about alcoholism, or the opposite of addiction being connection or something. It sounds it's very nice, but as we know, connection is a nice thing, so therefore it's true. It's not true because connection is a nice thing. I found, conversely, that recovery is about detaching from a billion things I was entangled with, detaching from other people who are very unwell, in order that I can have real conversations with them without being hypnotised by my own concern for them, that I say the wrong thing and do the wrong thing. It's being able to go through life being unaffected by things because I'm relying on God for my sense of value, identity and purpose, not on how well things are going out there. As soon as my dependence is on anything out there, I'm effed, because the things out there, sometimes they go well, sometimes they go badly. In the literature, it talks about seeming success. Fortune threw applause my way. If I base my life on applause, whether it's my own self-applause or whether it's other people approving me or validating me or loving me or doing any of those things, if my life is dependent on other people treating me well, good luck. My emotions become like a stock price on the stock market. If the stock market goes up, I'm good. If the stock market goes down, I'm bad. Detach from everything. Attach to God. Doesn't mean I don't have relationships with people, but it means I can come at those relationships in an adult way rather than in an enmeshed way where if you feel something, I automatically feel it. No. Just because you're upset doesn't mean I have to be upset. Just because you're happy about something doesn't mean I have to be. I'm going to make up my own mind. And as a result of that, I can handle stuff that I couldn't handle 30 years ago. I can handle stuff some people in my family are not very good at handling. I wasn't dealt the best hand of cards, shall we say. But what matters is how I've played that hand of cards. And how I've played it has come from God, not from me. How well I did is demonstrated by the need to come into recovery in the first place. My first meeting, I was very young, and they thought for a while, I was in my 20s, but apparently I looked like I was 17 and about to die. And someone said, you were almost see-through, as though you'd already gone, as though you'd already died and were coming back. That's what you looked like. They also tried to send me to Al-Anon, which was meeting just down the road, and I had to sort of grab them by the shoulders and shake them and say, no, I need to be here. And then they gave me a half cup of tea, which shook. And then I realised why they'd given me a half cup of tea, because I was still shaking from the night before. I was in a real state, and I'm not in a real state today. And that's entirely due to God working through the 12 steps and fellowship and all of those things. But I'm sure that's time, so I'm going to stop there. So thank you for listening.